Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Sunny. And this is Sunny from the narcissistic recording Booze Equals Violence, which I have now made private. And I know I said I don't like to take videos down, and I don't. And I took it down for two reasons. First reason is, it bothered me being up with the children in the first place. I didn't like it, but I thought, it was partially sponsored, partially paid for, and I thought maybe more good would come from bad by leaving it up. Secondly, as those of you who have known who I have taken videos down for, there is a surcharge for actually taking a video down. So it is what it is. But I made the agreement, because she sent me a very long follow-up, that I would read the follow-up as a video and do that for her as well. So here's Sunny's follow-up. Hi, Ollie. I first wanted to say thank you for doing the video, and also I want to touch base and kind of respond to a couple questions and comments that you said during the video. So about the herpes thing, no, I never had a breakout, and I never have. Even still, my doctor says I'm a carrier. Also, I am in therapy and have been in therapy for postpartum depression and depression. The rage only stand from the postpartum, and I am no longer like that. It has subsided except when you drink. Except when you drink, if you're getting body slammed and throwing hands yourself. So, and I would ask, what's going on in therapy that this is, are you talking about your alcoholism in therapy? It has subsided substantially, and I'm definitely on the up and up from that. I also wanted to include this fact because it's hard to remember everything and get everything out in one email. Me and him are very religious and are Christians. Oh, God, don't hide behind that. Listen. I have a lot of issues with organized religion. A lot, because I think they're all controlled by narcissistic sociopaths. I think the most religious people in the world are actually atheists, because they're the ones telling you, God talked to me this, God says that, and what they're saying is they're replacing themselves with God. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, I believe in God. I think God is real. I think Jesus is real now. I really do, as more and more things happen and come to light. But I haven't stepped one foot inside a church since Virginia's funeral in 2005. That was the last time. You don't need to be throwing Christianity in everybody's face and God this and God that and sitting in a magic house for however many hours on a Sunday to believe in God and to be a good Christian and do God's work. You don't. All that Christianity stuff, it's a tool of the narcissist. And I don't buy any of it. I don't. It's almost as if it's a tactic from both of us against... Wait a minute. Me and him are very religious and are Christians. It's almost as if it's used as a tactic from both of us against each other. Exactly my point. Exactly my point. You're not Christians. You're just using the religion for control over each other. You're not Christians. Which makes the fact that we're alcoholics worse, because the Christianity and the guilt of sin in that perspective. Listen, the thing with Christianity is nobody's perfect. Only God's perfect, and I don't even buy that. No one's perfect. Everybody has sin. Everybody has issues. Saying, oh, it's against because it's against Christianity, that's bullshit. That is a bullshit reason. Because it's about the control. It's about the guilt. Guilt. Another tactic of narcissism. So I would heavily take my foot off the religion pedal for a while, because you guys are using it nothing more than a weapon against each other, as you're admitting. You could sit in your kitchen and talk to God. You could sit in your living room and talk to God. You could talk to God in the shower, in the car, or wherever. And I said I fell pregnant just for, honestly, a lack of better words. We planned to have 4 children from the beginning of the marriage. And I believe for so long that as a Christian, we were supposed to have kids, and it would make me feel guilty for taking my birth control medication. Okay, wait a minute. See, you just contradicted yourself here. First of all, you were very clear. I keep saying you fell pregnant, like this just happened. And I'm taking it as you were doing that to minimize and to make yourself seem to appear to be a bigger victim in this situation. So if the children are planned at the beginning of the marriage, then what did you get the birth control for in the first place? If you're not taking your birth control and you're having unprotected sex, you're like the whole statement it contradicts itself from beginning to end. You're still not being honest here. You're still trying to minimize everything. You're going to have to face... I know you're saying you're doing it kind of partially, but you're not doing it enough. You have not fully pulled the sheet back. So I didn't take it. We plan on 4 of our children, which I know doesn't sound right, especially given the toxicity of our relationship. And you're absolutely right. I don't want to be with him a lot of the time. I'm codependent on him. And like a lot of black women, and this was brought up in the comments, that like it's about the main thing with black women I find on my channel come to me is they were raised by women, and they have been women who put all their value in their vagina. Who wants to fuck them? And as long as they have a dick laying next to them, any dick doesn't matter. It's all that counts. I don't know what to do to him sometimes, and I've often told him I am too damaged and too emotional from my past to be in a functional relationship. I am well aware that we have a struggle with alcohol and we are alcoholics. I am not justifying that by any means, and I have a very self-aware personality, and I know I'm a very difficult person to get along with. I'm acknowledging that is one thing, but living with it is something entirely different. I'm a very dominant woman, and it's hard for me to be talked to by a certain kind of way. Yeah, as you'll talk to the other black women on this channel, their mothers, and they're the same way. Same way. Looking to fight. It's looking to fight. Talking to you in a certain... And what's that do? That hits a switch, and then that's it, and then how dare you, and like, for what? To me, it's almost... It's again, it's a woman trying to almost act like a man. But you're not a man. You're a woman. You're a female. You're different. So I guess I was not created or taught growing up how to be a submissive woman. Clearly not. Yes, I am black, but my mother is not. That even explains it further. You're mixed? Because mixed race, see, I have a lot of mixed race people on my channel as well, especially women, okay? And their problem is they don't fit in anywhere. They don't fit in anywhere. Because the white people never accept you, the black side never accepts you. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and not to sound too racist or try to sound too racist. I'm assuming you were raised probably by your white, by by your white side of the family. Both, I mean, but by the way you talk, because you're obviously very well educated, you can write. You're very well educated. So somebody took, because other people were saying in the comments section they thought one of yous were white, and you both are educated people. Yes, I'm black, but my mother is not. My mom is white, and my biological father is black, and my stepdad is white. Okay, so you were raised by white people. All my brothers and extended family is white. I've never seen black people, hardly ever, nor did I ever step foot in a black household. Yeah, but here's what I'm going to say, and this is a reality, and you could say, you're being a racist asshole. Okay. My mother was white. Okay. She raised me like a black woman. Your mother was white. She raised you like a black woman because she had a black child with a black father. Okay. Just because your mom is white doesn't mean she didn't carry on the character, the traits and the characteristics. It just doesn't. You can ask Brittany about that, who writes in from time to time on my channel. Because I'm telling you, Sonny, every part of your personality, how you behave, how you interact, says you were raised in the same type of urban environment, which you say you weren't. Okay, but the behavior's the same. Same in my family. I was raised in the suburbs, but I might as well have been raised in the hood by the violence, the sexuality, like all the things that went on in my house. It affects white people too. Not to the extent it does on black families. But I'm telling you, and the other black, and I saw other black women in the comment section telling you the same thing. Yeah, this is it. This is what happens in the black community and black families. So even though your mom was white and you grew up in a white area, your mother still raised you like a black mother and like a black woman. That's what she did to you. And it had to be very difficult for you growing up, because I've talked to other mixed race kids. Growing up in a predominantly white area, you don't fit in anywhere. So, I mean, it would make sense where your hostility and your anger and your need to fight comes from. Doesn't make it any easier for your husband to deal with or for anyone else to deal with. And it doesn't alleviate him of his alcoholic violent tendencies either. Again, I'm more concerned about all this going down in front of your children. You know? Because I have to wonder if I had gone on your original video that we took down, if I had just said he's an abusive, narcissistic asshole and what a jerk off and on and on and on, would you ask me to have taken it down? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, you might say, yeah, I realized the kids after the fact, but you knew the kids were on there before you sent it in to me. So that's not accurate about black families in my case, at least. I beg to differ. I was not raised by my black side, nor did I grow up with them or make them clear up until I was even 15 years old. I grew up in a predominantly white town that had maybe 4 or 5 black kids here. So the history behind me acting like my mother is inaccurate because I was not raised by a black mother. Again, you could still be raised by a black mother even if your mother's white. Even if your mother's white. And here's what the problem, and I'm going to tell you, and you can tell me if this is what the case is and not. Look, I find children, people who are mixed race, okay, whose mother is white, and then, because you're not the first person who's mixed race and then the mother ended up with a white with a white family, ended up marrying a white guy, and ended up raising a white family in a white area. Okay, people are racist. They just is. People are racist for whatever reason. Okay, and my concern is, and this isn't on you, but your mother viewed you as a scarlet letter, meaning you're evidence that if your mother never had you, she could have lied, and like, I don't know what her deal is. She could have lied and said, no, I've never slept with a black guy. I've never been in a relationship with a black guy. You being born, you're like her scarlet letter of reminder that she had a relationship with a black guy. Now, I don't have a problem with it. I don't give a shit. Like, if my daughter ended up with a black guy, as long as he was a decent, hardworking guy, I don't give a fuck. But I'm telling you what the reality is, probably in your area growing up, and where a lot of this comes from. I have always been extremely sensitive and become very defensive when my feelings get hurt. And I have this tough guy persona. Yeah, tough guy. Yeah, you're not a guy. You're not a guy. And I have this tough guy persona that I portray because I have a very fragile heart from past relationships and just in general. This conversation on these videos, particularly the last two I sent you, were me attempting to get him to have a conversation about the topics at all. But here's the problem. I mean, you're drinking. You're not being straight up. Neither one of you are. How is he going to look at you and take any conversation calmly you're having with him seriously at this point? How? I wouldn't. I'd just be waiting for the next freak out from you. I don't know how at this point he takes any rational conversation with you seriously without being in some kind of marriage counseling or in the presence of a counselor. I feel so guilty being in a relationship with him because I feel like I'm doing more damage to my kids, and I tell him that all the time, that we were better off separating. Because the damage that we put on them from being together is far worse than having a broken home. But he keeps pointing the religious guilt, saying that God will be mad at me and then I will be punished for leaving because God hates divorce. Religious guilt is the worst. Right. And I'm telling you, it's just that it's just a tactic you're using against each other. You hate him, but you don't want to leave. I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm just being honest. That is the reason why I feel trapped in this relationship. He's also the breadwinner, and I am a stay-at-home mom. So I have no skills that would qualify me to go out to make a decent living until I finish school. You speak well. You write well. What other skills do you need? Have you looked? Again, it does sound like an excuse. I mean, you could take classes at home online. You can take online classes. There's a million different things you can do. The only reason why I said in the video to ask the kids, because he was gaslighting me so many times about past fight and stuff, that was the first time that the children had really witnessed at that age that they could describe what happened. See, but you've been fighting in front of them for so long, so now finally they can talk about it, and that's what you want them to talk about? It's wrong. Which I shouldn't have done. It was inappropriate for sure. I thought maybe if he heard it from the children's mouth that he would feel guilty and that our toxic behavior would stop. Wanted to point out that my kids were asleep when we first started having the conversation, and they woke up in the middle of us having it, and we should have stopped, but I kind of panicked and knew we would never come back to the conversation if it got dropped, and I wanted to get it on tape. Not just for your channel, but for my own sake, and because we both agreed that we should record to see what we're doing wrong in the marriage. Yeah, but I mean, there was TV playing, there was kids pro. You got 4 kids. They were all asleep. I mean, it sounded like I heard the kids from beginning to end on that tape. Maybe the youngest one was asleep, but the other kids were awake. They were there the whole time. So you're still not being, you're still trying to minimize this stuff. You can't, listen, you're still trying to collect your chips. Hopefully you have more chips than him and you'll be right. You're both wrong. You're both equally wrong. I witnessed alcohol my whole life growing up. My mother and stepfather drink frequently, and they also drink while they also, while drinking, had a toxic relationship, and that was all I really knew as a child. So you just admit it. I mean, your issues stem from your family, whether it's your mother and your stepfather, but your issues stem from your family. The fact that your mom's white doesn't really matter because she still raised you like a black woman, like a black mother. And I was in a very abusive relationship when I was 16 years old and was living in the house with my then boyfriend and his whole family. He would beat me and rape me all the time, and I never talked back and was completely brainwashed and abused for almost a year with no contact to my family. At 16? He took complete advantage of me, and I ran. At 16, if your 16-year-old daughter is off living with someone and your family doesn't know, doesn't care, that shit that happens in the city all the time, in all the urban areas all the time. He took complete advantage of me, and I ran away from home to be with him before he started abusing me because I believed I loved him. So you ran away from home. I was very naive and stupid at that point in my life. My mom sent me back east to be with my biological father's side of the family in hopes of helping me out of that relationship. And while I was there, I started drinking and tasted alcohol for the first time, and I loved the escape it gave me. I was looking for love in all the wrong places and was in complete culture shock while I was there. There were black people everywhere, and I felt like I missed out on my whole life being around them. I got exposed to the ghetto trashy side in my grandma's project she lived in. It was horrible. My cousin ended up pimping me out one night while I was drunk and passed out, while triggered me when my husband did it to me, It put me back in that mental place. It was a horrible feeling. That was a long 2 months. When I got back home, I was so damaged. I had no self-esteem left, no value or self-respect for myself. So you did get the black urban experience, but it was at your grandmother's house. Your mother raised you partially like a black mother and then sent you off, which happens a lot in the black community, sends you off to someone else where you get sexually assaulted. Go ahead, ask the other black women on my channel. They'll tell you your experience, other than you grew up around a lot of white people, isn't any different from theirs at all. I can't tell you how many of them have been sent off to family members where they were raped. This is what I recognized in the video, because you are following the same cycle. You will destroy all 4 of your children if you continue doing this. I went back to my first abuser and nothing changed. He ended up beating me the night I went to see him, and he pulled a gun on me, and out of 3 bullets in the chamber, I held it to my head and pulled the trigger 3 times. No bullets came out, and I ran for my life and never looked back. And that's where my belief in God magnified, and I really felt close to him for saving me, which doesn't help with the religious guilt. After that, well, if that's what happened, that didn't happen in a church, did it? No, it happened out in real life. So After that night, I promised myself I would never allow a man or boy to treat me that way again. And after 10 years of emotional abuse and then the physical abuse starting, I ended up snapping. I always had a smart mouth throughout the course of our relationship, but that is what he said attracted him to me, was my attitude and sassiness, and now he says the same thing that attracted him to me is the very thing that is pushing him away. Right, because you're his mother, who he hates and loves at the same time. I had a lot of identity issues growing up because I'm half black and half white, like I stated, but I was never around my black side of the family and never got to know the culture or anything like that. So I had a hard time identifying with who I was as a person until you did go there and experience the whole thing. I am a very intense person and passionate, and that's not always good because you can go passionate with anger and passionate towards love also. The only thing that really stops me from leaving is a guilt that I have about my Christianity and towards God. And you're right about me almost looking for everything he does wrong to be mad about it. I do that, and also the comment about me not being scared is true to an extent. Because I've experienced abuse before, it's almost as if I hope a situation will get so bad that it will justify me leaving enough to where God won't be mad and that he will understand. Well, do you think he's just going to come down and tell you, go ahead, Sonny, it's cool? No, go. If God keeps bringing you to people that tell you to leave, then leave. Again, this isn't an excuse. This is just the truth from my story. I do love my children very much, and I absolutely do not want them to grow up toxic, which is why I reached out in the first place. I'm not trying to point fingers at him 100%. I'm well aware that I have a part two, and it's just hard to get all the details out in one email. 10 years of a relationship is hard to sum up in just a few short paragraphs. It works better if you don't try to get it out in one email, if you try to tell like one story at a time. This is your problem. Okay? You think you have to get everything all out at once, and you inundate people with emotion and information, and you don't stop until you get it all out. And you end up driving everybody away. Constructive criticism is hard to hear, but it's very imperative. So I thank you for being honest, because sometimes you need to hear the truth as it is to get the help that you need to move forward. As painful as it is to hear, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Also, the comment about the postpartum depression and rage, that is directly in relation to postpartum. And in the last few years of me getting pregnant and having children, I did become a very intense emotional person. I have always written him and talked to him many times, telling him how sorry I am for behaving that way, that I did that listen, I think you're right, because as an excuse of just saying you're sorry and just behaving properly. Doesn't matter how many I'm sorry letters you wrote, eventually the words are meaningless. It's as cheap as the paper it's written on. Men aren't impressed by words or writing or any of that stuff. Men are impressed by actions. You can want to write this 1,000,000 times over, how sorry it's going to go. To him, he's going to say that's easy for you. That's meaningless to you for you to write stuff down. Having children and all the hormonal changes have caused me to become a lot different, and I know that has taken a toll on him as a person, and the emotional deadness has taken a toll on me as well. He has ignored me our whole relationship and has never comforted me when I needed it, especially when I really needed it the most, going through postpartum depression and feeling suicidal. I know it was very hard. I am on the other side of postpartum now, and I'm getting back into the swing of my normal self and my normal personality. I understand that I had a huge part in this as well, and that you can only do so much to a person before they can snap, and that goes both ways. I have a lot of guilt and blame on myself as a mother for allowing this stuff to happen and for almost creating arguments just to get out of the marriage. I'm wrong for that. I'm just barely looking up what narcissism is and what BPD is and what codependency is within just the last month or so, and my eyes have been opened extremely. So this is just a beginning of me trying to heal and fix whatever is going on. Like I said, I do not want my children to grow up in a toxic environment because I want them to have the best start and not have to struggle the way I did growing up. Well, they're going to struggle if you continue on with this. Because right now, how you're acting, it's probably not a whole hell of a lot different than your grandma's house. The chaos, the fighting, all that shit. And my eyes have been opened extremely. So this is just the beginning of me trying to fix whatever is going on, because like I said, I do not want my children to grow up in a toxic environment, because I just want them to have the best and not have to struggle the way I did growing up. We're not drinking anymore, thank God, but there's already been enough damage, and I can't take that back, and I feel extremely guilty for it. Thank you for your honesty, though. I'm going to write another couple of emails trying to give you a history and a background of my childhood so you can kind of piece together what my issues are, if that would be okay. I do not want to keep this to keep going. Believe me, I already know what your issues are. I'm a firm believer in knowledge is power, and ever since I have been studying the stuff and gaining an understanding for what it is and the depth of where it comes from, I've been planning the best way to go about separating, because I've told him many times we're more toxic together than apart. I really don't like that you say I don't care about my children because they are my life. I think this needs to be an understanding of people having their own issues and struggles with things that they are trying to correct. And addiction is a bitch. It makes you very selfish, and it's wrong and a horrible cycle. How does being selfish make being very selfish and caring for your children jive? It doesn't. When you're very selfish as a mother, you can't care for your children properly. That's just a fact. I mean, you cannot like it, but you're continuing the cycle because you're making the decision every time you pick up alcohol. That is a choice. I don't call it a disease. It's not a disease. It is a choice. When you pick it up and drink it, it's a choice. Just like every time I would go out and buy a pack of cigarettes when I was smoking 4 packs a day. Every one was a choice. But like I said, I've been working on myself in therapy trying to make things right. But codependent and BPD and narcissism never came up in therapy. Then if you've been in therapy and you're just finding out about narcissism and BPD now, you need a new therapist, because your therapists don't know what the fuck they're doing, or they're not challenging you at all. But now that I have a name for this stuff, I'm seeking a better therapist with knowledge on that specifically. There is a lot of damage from my own past I'm still trying to work out, and I probably shouldn't have become a mother or wife until I addressed all that stuff. I was 19 when him and I met. I love my children with all my heart, and I have been giving every ounce of myself to them. This email that I sent you is shortening up the arguments and abusiveness in our relationship, and it's seeming like it all happened at once within a short period, which it didn't. Please understand that it doesn't matter how long it happened. And you're just over-explaining everything. You over-explain everything, and I don't think there's any way to stop you from doing it. You want to tell your entire story how you want to tell it, and there's no stopping you. You're like a pull string toy. Once the string is pulled, there is no turning it off, until that string winds down. So it seems like a lot of times, and it seems like it's frequently in front of the children, but it wasn't at all, because I summed it up to a point where the damage, summed it up just to point out the damage and toxicity. When we were drinking heavily, we would only drink after the kids went to sleep. But the few times we did day drink were the ones that I pointed out in the first email, as you can see, as they always ended badly, which is why we didn't do it that often. Well, if it's just these rare, few and far between incidents, then why is your husband saying this happens all the time? I don't believe you. No, it does. You're still trying to minimize it. Why is your husband like you saying you drink so often? Like, it's what he said. I mean, it's to the point where you guys don't even remember. You get blackout drunk. So, I mean, how do you know? You don't. And I say that we tried wine or alcohol again after not drinking for a while, because he gets triggered and wants to drink, and then tells him that he can handle it. I told him I don't want it in the house because there's a history of bad things happening. He gets mad at me and tells me that he's a grown-ass man, he can do whatever he wants, that I can't control him. So I let him do what he wants, and then it's always hard for me because I struggle with drinking myself. Then I always end up drinking because he doesn't want to drink alone. But he's a very good convincing me that we can handle the alcohol. Oh, stop it. Stop it. Stop. He's good at convincing you. Stop it. Stop it. See, here we go. You go on with these long paragraphs and these long trying to alleviate your blame. He's convincing you that you know you can't handle it, and you know goddamn well what's going to happen when you do it. He's very good at convincing me that we can handle it, the alcohol, and that he's not the same with it. And he tells me I need to be submissive and respect his choice as a man, and that I need to let him learn on his own. The majority of our relationship, he has been the one drinking, not me. But like I said, when you sum up 10 years into a few paragraphs, makes it seem like there's a lot more drinking from both of us than there actually was. I did not drink at all during any of my pregnancies, and I didn't drink for 8 to 9 months prior to all of them, but did drink before getting pregnant with the first one. I also want to point out the comment you made in the video. In the past, I have definitely had my fair share of being disrespectful to him, and definitely pushed his buttons for sure. I have done that a lot in our marriage, and I know I am wrong for it and take responsibility for my share. But that night in this video I was referring to, I was trying my best to avoid an argument, and he kept pressuring me about hiding the money, and I got mad enough to yell and cuss back, and then he ended up snapping. I promise you I was not pressing him that night. I think I had enough anger. I think he had enough anger in him built up from a lot of our past to where anything I said at that point that wasn't "I love you" was enough to trigger him. That was the first time in 10 years that I ever put my hands on him. I have always known that if you hit a man, you're most likely going to get hit back because it's a human reaction, and that's why I never did it. But that night in particular, I was at my wit's end with him. And with our whole relationship, I felt like I was you're making excuses again. You're making excuses again. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I felt like I was back in the relationship when I was 16, was triggered. I'm not justifying doing that at all, and I said that in the video, but you are justifying it. Why are you writing it to me then? You are justifying it. It doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't matter. You're still justifying it. You say, I'm not justifying it, but then to go on again, on and on and on and on and on. You're justifying it. Yes, you are justifying it. But just like it goes both ways with someone pushing you enough, a person can snap. I cannot put emphasis enough on the fact that this particular incident was not provoked from me. The others, I will agree with you and give that to you because I can be a bitch while drinking, but I was not this night. And even though me being a bitch, I never ever put my hands on him until that night, because in the back of my mind I always knew he was capable of hurting me. I only ever scratched at him and slapped his arms while he choked me, and this happened 4 times. I don't believe in equal rights, and I'm not a feminist at all. I believe that a woman is supposed to be submissive and have a gentle and quiet spirit. But even with that, this is something I have to learn, because growing up, my mother was very dominant, as all my aunts and my grandmother on my mother's side. But I had to learn 20 plus years of, I've learned this, but I have to unlearn 20 plus years. I've learned this behavior, and it's not easy. At least I want to get help, and I know something is wrong. But again, it's like I told you, the problem goes back to your mother. Problem still goes back to your mother. I feel like this tape wasn't a good example of our typical conversations because, for one, I was desperately trying to get a conversation. No, I don't, because you knew you were recording it. Did he know you were recording? Or did you know you were, or are you the only one knew you were recording? See, if you both know you're being recorded, things are more natural. If you're the only one knowing it's being recorded, it's a lot easier to stay calm. Because you know everything he says he can't lie about and gaslight, because it's on tape. I feel like this tape wasn't a good example of our typical conversation because for one, I was desperately trying to get a conversation that he would be willing to have for more than 3 minutes without taking off and leaving. I'm definitely being more aggressive in this video than typical because he was actually talking and I was trying to get out as much topic as I possibly could on tape. Almost seeing the validation that yes, it is a horrible relationship, and I'm not crazy. Well, you didn't need to get anything on tape to know you're in a horrible relationship. That should have started the first time he hit you. So I'm not trying to point the fingers here. I was just trying to get the proof of certain things that I wrote happen, because people can say stuff on email, but without video or audio proof, it could possibly be a lie. I have a lot of issues myself, and I know that. Trust me, I do. That's why I'm in therapy. Maybe you don't understand how incredibly hard it is to have a few minutes to have a conversation when you have 4 young children. I don't know. I know what it's like to have children. One's enough. I can imagine what 4 is, but it doesn't matter. Again, you're still looking for justifications. You don't use your children as an excuse to have the conversation. You use your children as an excuse not to have the conversation at that point. But he is gone for 16 hours a day, and when he gets home from work, the last thing he wants to do is have a conversation. Well, who would after 16 hours? So he's gone for 16 hours a day, and and on Saturdays, all of our children are up and awake, and it's almost impossible to have a few minutes to talk by ourselves without any interruptions. Well, because he probably has to work 16 hours a day because you have 4 children. These are the choices you made, Sonny. If he didn't work 16 hours a day, would you be able to afford your 4 children? So we started this conversation. This conversation started before the kids were up, and they got up and came in the middle of the conversation. This was a rare Saturday that she had off, and we needed to talk about things. We hardly talk in front of our kids because we never talked about anything that is going on in our relationship. We walk around silent most of the time about little pointless, or talk about little pointless nothings that happen during our day. And the deepest our conversation will get is when we are discussing our fantasy football league. We almost pretend nothing is wrong. We just go on with the walls of our daily life and daily routine. And then there comes a point to where everything has been held that we have never addressed because we never address anything. And then there's always a heated discussion within minutes of me bringing anything up, anything of our past up, and he will leave and come back, and the conversation will pick back up. And we'll never pick back up. Because I have a feeling you don't let anything go. I mean, I'm sure he's tried to have conversations with you in the past, and you just don't let anything go. So I am always in feeling of incompletion because nothing wrong is acknowledged and there is never a resolution. Just forgive or you won't be forgiven, and throw all that sin into a sea of forgetfulness and how you move forward if you keep looking back. I don't know how other relationships are, or if other husbands at least hug their wives when they cry or just reassure them when they're having a bad day. But how often are you crying and having a bad day? Seems like you're always crying and having a bad day. Like I said, how much is enough? But I never get that from him. And I get that it was draining when I had postpartum depression. It was very emotional. I was very upset all the time. That was hard to deal with, and I didn't expect him to always be nice, but he never, not one time, comforted me. Meanwhile, I never missed a beat with all my duties and household chores, even when he was laid off. He didn't lift a finger with the kids or with the housework. He slept in every day. I got the kids ready for school and cooked and cleaned and took care of the kids and did the shopping. I mean, I did everything still, and he didn't help me with them. When I would ask for a little help, he would get mad and say he needs fresh air, that nothing is ever good enough for me. So that was draining. I felt that he could have, at least while he was laid off for 7 months, that he could have helped me with the kids since they're his too. I didn't ask much, but to every once in a while get up and get the kids breakfast so that I could shower. And I agree it's my job to do the house, and I do my job extremely well, like I said in the video. And the house is spotless when he gets home from dinner and is already done with his clothes and are out every morning when he gets up. His lunch is cooked, everything is situated that he could ask for from me, from a wife, including sleeping with him whenever he wants it, and doing any and every sexual thing he asks for because I have to submit to him. And sometimes it's 2 times every day. You know, he said, I know you said, why do I keep sleeping with him? But that's kind of hard not to do when you're married, and he made to feel it's an obligation. He tells me my body is not my own because the Bible says so. And you stay. He knows I really feel guilty about upsetting God, and he uses it as a power tool against me all the time. But he also expects me to never be upset about anything, and expects me to be silent about what bothers me, especially if it's pertaining to him and what he did. I have to forget that anything went wrong, but I can also see why he gets that way, because, as I stated before, I would almost micromanage everything he would do, to the point of him able to do nothing right, not being able to do nothing right, and that definitely magnified while I was dealing with postpartum depression. He's done with you. Other than sticking it in, Sonny, he's done with your bullshit. Whatever you want to call it, however you want to justify it, he's done with you. He's done with your bullshit. He don't want to hear it. He's done hearing it. He's never going to want to hear it again. All he wants to do is fuck you. That's it. He's done with you. He's done with your bullshit. He's done with your excuses, your postpartum, your crying, your emotion, you wanting to talk about the past, because all he sees it as is another tool in manipulation himself. He's done with it. And men get to that point where they're just fucking done with it. I'm done with you. That's what he's saying. Every time you open your mouth, just shut the fuck up. I'm done with you. I don't want to hear it. You want to know why he doesn't comfort you when you cry? Because he likes it when you cry. He gets a thrill when you cry. He's happy when you're upset. It's like, you're upset? Good. That's what he's thinking to himself. Good. I hope she's miserable. That's what she's thinking. Now, you want to sit there and keep taking that because of God or whatever reason and whatever other excuses you want to live, that's on you. But he also expects me to never be upset with anything. He also expects me to never be upset with anything and expect me to be silent about what bothers me, especially if it's pertaining to him and what he did. But everything bothers you about him and what he did. There's always something bothering you. When is there something not bothering you? There's always something bothering you. You admitted you look for things to use against him. So, like, at what point does he get to say, fuck you enough? Like, how often does he have to keep taking you seriously? You don't even take yourself seriously. The narcissist will never. If you don't take yourself seriously, the narcissist is never going to. Because you're still looking for excuses, Sonny. At the end of the day, you're still looking for excuses. I have to forget that anything went wrong, but I can also see why he gets that way, because as I've stated before, I would almost micromanage everything. Okay, I already read that one. I wish you would maybe look into what postpartum depression is in the depths of what it does to a person's mind. Unless you already know, then no need. Yeah, I know what it does. I got my tubes tied after my fourth kid, and we're not having any more children because of that reason. I just wish there was a way to explain everything to you. Maybe if he would join in and explain his part as well, so that you get the whole picture. It's just frustrating to be dogged and to be made to seem like a bad mom based off of one video and one email. Please trust and believe that I am absolutely not innocent in this at all. And I know that. But you say that, but then you act differently. You keep saying, I know I'm not innocent, but then you try to justify like you're innocent. Every time. I've tried to get us to couples therapy, but he doesn't want to go because he doesn't want people to know our business. So I wanted the thoughts of an outside person that wasn't biased toward me or him. Thank you for your input. I'm going to try to share more of my background story, like I said a little bit ago. Please share this email with your viewers. Thank you. He will never take you seriously, Sonny, because you don't take yourself seriously. You're still looking for excuses. So, I mean, because you have, and you know what it is? He works for 16 hours a day, and I think you have no respect for his man's time, for time. None. You have no respect for anybody's time, to be quite honest with you. I mean, that's my opinion. okay, because you think that you have an excuse to just go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about whatever you want to get out, whatever you want to say, without any regard for his time. And I think that's probably a problem in general with you in your relationships. You don't take yourself seriously. He's never going to. So I hope that helps. Thank you for the follow-up and contribution, Sonny. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to have a private video made or sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.